If you have yet to achieve the big success, you may not realize that things that feel like failure aren't failure. Hello again, everyone. I'm Eli's dad with Project Eli, where we educate, we lead, we inspire. And speaking of inspiration, I've read an article by a lady named Kirsty Taylor. 5 things that feel like failure, but actually aren't. And to be very candid with you, the article should have been proofread a little more clearly, some corrections should have been made, but the content, the concept is so unbelievably good. I've made, back when I was an English teacher, I took out my red pen and made a few corrections, but once again, the concept, the substance of this article is phenomenal. You need to hear it, so here goes. The fear of failure is possibly what holds people back from changing their lives the most. Yet failure couldn't be more subjective. Think about it. Failure is defined as a lack of success. But that looks entirely different for everyone. A farmer may think of failure as his inability to yield the amount of crop he wanted that year, while your neighbor may think that they're a failure when their bratty teenager slams the door in their face. Eli, excuse me, Eli. Both people believe they failed, yet neither are going to throw up their hands and give up. The farmer will learn more about crop rotations. The parent will hopefully try another way of connecting with their kid. So then, the question is, were those examples ever really failures? There are a lot of things you'll encounter in life that feel like a failure, but I want to change your mind about them because what might feel like you're not succeeding could actually be a sign that you are. Think I'm insane? Hear me out on these. Realizing the life you're living doesn't make you happy anymore. It's not easy to admit that once you made yourself happy or fulfilled something that fulfilled you, let me try that again. It's not easy to admit that once there's something that made you happy or fulfilled doesn't anymore. You may regret the decisions you made that you once felt so sure about. But I can't stress enough that this feeling isn't a failure. It's growth. Back in 2018, I was let go from my job and dumped by my boyfriend. Neither of which I was particularly sad about, but I felt like a complete loser nonetheless. I couldn't imagine going back to marketing or technical recruiting. I started questioning all of my life choices up until then. But now I know that all that stress and worry was a complete waste of time. Being dumped by a boyfriend I didn't like led me to make radical changes in my love life. Being let go from recruiting left me with the choice: continue a career I hated or do something entirely different. Spoiler, I chose something different. Deciding that I didn't like my life anymore led me to create one I do love. So while I couldn't have felt more like a failure at the time, that discomfort was simply the side effect of changing my life for the better. You made a mistake or you messed up. Imagine this. You build a company from nothing. You work hard and believe you're doing everything right to make the company successful. But that drive turns into perfectionism, which leads to you being ousted from the company. Well, that's what happened to Steve Jobs at Apple. His perfectionism ended up being where he messed up. The company couldn't grow because of Jobs' intense need to have everything his way. Now at the time, Jobs saw this ousting as his biggest failure. But with his newfound time, he went on to found Next and spin Pixar off into what it is today. From those experiences, he learned that he didn't have to have such tight control over the projects that he was involved with. The most successful people in our society didn't get where they are today by making 0 mistakes. In fact, it's the opposite. They learned from their screw-ups and strived to do better. That's because mistakes only hold you back if you let them. You may feel like you royally messed up now, but you have the choice to see a lesson. You haven't failed. This is merely a setback, something everyone goes through, even the founder of Apple. Here's a quote from Winston Churchill. Success is the ability to go from failure to failure without losing your enthusiasm. Unquote. Next point. Your life doesn't look like your friends' lives. We've all heard that comparison is the thief of joy, blah, blah, blah. But it's hard to remember that when you're watching people you grew up with start their family or take out a mortgage on their new home. If you grew up in a community that placed a lot of emphasis on achieving goals like marriage, kids, and a fancy corporate job, you'd feel like a failure for not having those. But that's because you haven't considered that the most successful lives are ones that aren't rushed. I grew up in a town where getting married was everyone's ultimate goal. In fact, half of my graduating class is either married, has kids, or both. So the fact that just 2 years ago I was 27, very much single and unemployed, didn't make me feel all that great about myself. Now that I'm in a happy relationship, I could lay in bed wishing that I'd met my boyfriend earlier so I could have a similar life timeline as my friends from high school. But the fact is, even if I had met him earlier, we wouldn't have ended up together. That's because I have a history of dating emotionally unavailable, narcissistic men. I wouldn't have felt attracted to my nice, caring boyfriend. The process of dating people who were bad for me is what led me to date someone great for me. This doesn't just apply to your love life and work. This applies to any sort of comparison. Your life happens on its own time. The fact is, it looks different from other people. The fact that it looks different from other people's doesn't mean that you're a failure. Next point. You never proved yourself to people. What's your motivating factor for your idea of success? If a certain person pops into your mind who isn't your child or loving partner, then you may be feeling like a failure all over a life you don't even want to live. You see, people who feel like they need to prove themselves to someone operate off of a value wound. Somewhere inside them, they feel like they're not worthy of love, praise, and a spot at the table with everybody else. But the thing about that value wound is that when it guides you, you end up heading down a path that you might not even want. You end up living life based on other people's opinions instead of your own. Call me crazy, but a life where I'm not pursuing what I want sounds more like failure than never meeting someone else's expectations. Because other people aren't the ones living my life, I'm the one waking up to it every day. Next point, the gap between where you are and where you want to be. If you're focused on how far you have to go, you'll miss out on all the sights to be seen along the way. This couldn't be more true for people who want to make big changes in their lives. When something is out of your reach, it can feel like a failure until you finally obtained it. But like I said at the beginning of this article, failure is subjective. If you can keep working towards a goal, how can you be a failure? Your mindset around where you are and where you want to be is crucial. Dan Sullivan, entrepreneur and founder of Strategic Coach, talks about a thing called the gap mindset. Dan helps entrepreneurs reach their dreams, but he realized that there were two kinds of people along this journey. Those who focused on how far they had to go, and those who celebrated how far they had come. You can get hung up on feeling like a failure for not having already achieved something you want. Or you can find success in the growth you made and are currently making. The choice is yours. If you feel like a failure now, try to see things differently. Chances are your future self will look back on what you're going through and simply see it as a learning moment or redirect. Failure is subjective, and so is success. You define both for yourself, and the choice is yours. So don't let one moment hold you back from pursuing what you really want. Wow, tremendously important points. The key point I'd like to make based on this article by Kirsty Taylor, once again, huge shout out, is you have to look at failure as feedback, not failure. Failure is feedback. When you have that burning desire and there's a failure, it's your infinite partner telling you, hey, I'm on your side, but you're not going in the right direction. You got to change your direction. You got to change your paradigm. You got to change your viewpoint. Get to a new starting line. And always remember, don't ration the passion. Fashion the passion. I'm Eli's dad.